Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I jump into today's review, I do want to remind you, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our drive-through RPG affiliate links, which also work with all of the other One Bookshelf sites, or by making a one-time donation through PayPal, or by becoming a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Cypher System Starter Set from Monte Cook Games. This box set carries an MSRP of $29.99. It is available now. I do want to mention, I don't think it's available in PDF. I think you can only get this physically. I took a peek to see if there was a PDF over on Monte Cook Games' website, and then I also took a peek over on Drive-Thru RPG. If there's a PDF available, they are hiding it really well. Having said that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the starter set for Cypher System. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Monte Cook Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the two booklets that are contained in the starter set, but I want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there are a couple of very short introductory adventures in the Game Master's booklet. As a player, I would normally say, oh, well, you might want to tune out when we get to that. Might be some spoilers that you see. I think you're safe. I think you should be okay. I don't foresee spoiling anything just as we take a look at a page or two, and I am going to stay essentially spoiler-free as far as those adventures. First thing to mention is the starter set box, and I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised this box is pretty flimsy, especially compared to other starter sets we see out there. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I mean, it's a box, but this box is not really going to hold up all that well. It's going to get beat up pretty easily. Now, as far as the contents of that easily beaten up box, got quite a bit in here. We start off, we get a card talking about what's in the box here. So make sure that you've got everything on this sheet in the box. We also get a cool cheat sheet, which I appreciate quite a bit because it sums up the major aspects of Cypher System right here on the card for the players. We also get some info about armor, weapon damage, task difficulty, etc. Couple of dice. Get a 6-sider and a 20-sider. Those are the dice that players roll in the Cypher System. Also want to point out that the Game Master never rolls dice. It's only players who roll dice. So if you are a player out there who loves rolling bones, or maybe you're a Game Master who tends to fudge their dice rolls to keep the story moving along, you're probably going to appreciate the fact that it's only the players who roll dice. Got a couple of decks of cards. We have the Intrusion deck, which is for the Game Master. We have Player Intrusion. We also have Game Master Intrusion. And the Intrusions, I know it's kind of an odd name, but what it is, it's either the player or the Game Master inserting something different into the narrative. So as an example, if a player has an intrusion, they're going to make things much more interesting for the player characters, make something easier, or something was performed far better than expected. So it's going to be something good for the players. And it gives that player an opportunity to change the direction of the scene that you're in the middle of playing. Game Master Intrusion's kind of the opposite of that. So if the players roll a 1 on their 20-sided die, that allows the Game Master to utilize a Game Master Intrusion, which is going to provide an additional challenge or task or make things more difficult for the player characters. And that's where this deck comes in, is to give the game master kind of an idea on what they could do. And they're broken into combat, interaction, and miscellaneous. Then we also have the experience point deck, because this is not a game that you're going to be collecting hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of experience points. One experience point is a big deal. So the game master has these cards to hand out to the players, and players spend experience points both to improve their characters and also do things within the game. And I think it's kind of cool. We get player tips and game master tips on these cards as well. And the card stock on these is solid, really nice. I would sleeve them, obviously, but I always talk about sleeving all cards that come in board games or role-playing games. Next up, we've got pre-generated characters. And we have 5 pre-generated characters for each of the adventures. There are 2 adventures, so we actually have 10 pre-generated characters. So we've got a fantasy adventure. So we've got our character sheets for that. And I got to say, artwork's very cool. That's one of the things that I've noticed with Monte Cook Games. Their artwork is excellent. Really, really well done. So we've got the character sheets all broken down into what the players need. So we have 3 attributes. We've got might, speed, and intellect. I will get into a bit more of that as we take a peek at the player book. But here are our fantasy pre-gens, and then we have our science fiction pre-gens. Like I said, really cool artwork. Cypher System is more aimed towards narrative than super crunchy. Now, this is not a rules light role-playing game, but it's certainly not a heavy role-playing game either. Let's get poster map of 2 major locations, one for each of those adventures that I mentioned are in the Game Master's book. So here's the player's book. And this does a really, really good job of breaking down how Cypher System works. Actually, one of the best jobs of presenting a role-playing game in a starter set that I've seen on the market. And there are some fantastic starter sets out there. There are 8 basic rules to the game, or maybe more along the lines of 8 basic rules to creating the character. We have 4 different classes, which are kind of summed up by what their role is. So we've got the warrior, we've got the adept, we've got the speaker, and we also have the explorer. And then, of course, we can drill down even further into that. As I had mentioned, we've got 3 different attributes. We'll have a pool of points. Those points are used to activate special abilities. They can also be used to make the difficulty of a task lower. So task difficulty ranges from 1 to 10. And what the player needs to roll on their 20-sided die is going to be that difficulty times 3. So in essence, it gives us a range of 3 to 30. And of course, if you do some quick math, you then realize that anything that's a difficulty 7 or higher can't be rolled on a 20-sided die. That's where the effort will come in, which will bring down the task difficulty. There's a lot of things out there, skills, ciphers, things like that, which will bring down the task difficulty. Remember, it's not the final number. It's not the difficulty number. It's the task difficulty. So you could bring a task difficulty of 7 down to a 5, which then means you need to roll 15 or higher. So that's important to keep in mind. And I think some players, some game masters might not catch that right away. They might think, oh, well, it's just bringing the challenge number down. No, it's the task difficulty that's coming down. We also have recovery rolls, which is what we use the 6-sided die for, because you'll spend points out of your pools. So you could run out of points in your might pool, in your intellect pool, in your speed pool. When you take damage, you also lose points from those pools as damage. So usually something will probably say how you deduct those points of damage. So it might say, okay, it does might damage or it does speed damage. If something doesn't say that, then it goes might, speed, intellect. If you end up at 0 on all three, your character is toast. They are dying. It's sort of along the lines of Original Traveler, when you would deduct points out of your attributes. And if you hit 0, then you would buy the farm. So fairly easy there. Now, where I think Cypher System gets tricky is actually in its name, Cypher System, the ciphers. So ciphers are one-shot things that you get to utilize. So as an example, in a fantasy setting, a scroll or a spell or a potion, those would all be considered ciphers. They also have levels for the ciphers. So a higher level cipher is going to be better. So we've got that going on. And I think what I would probably look to do running Cypher System is I would really want to try to have an opportunity to play a game or two of Cypher with an experienced game master, and then maybe talk to them after the game to really get a better feel for how to run Cypher. Because as a player, pretty easy. As a game master, I think it's a lot trickier, which is really par for the course anyway. But we've got equipment as well. Other thing about the ciphers I think is a little off maybe is how well ciphers would work depending on the genre. So some genres might be a little trickier with ciphers as opposed to others. So say a fantasy setting, I think is pretty easy to come up with ciphers. Whereas if it was a modern kind of gritty crime genre sort of setting, I think that might be a little trickier. Like I said, kind of curious. I have not started reading the core rulebook yet. I will be, because I'll have a review of that in the not too distant future. But I got to say, I am super intrigued by Cypher. And if you are looking for a narrative game as opposed to something where you're going to sit there and role play the minutia of everything, I think Cypher would be a great fit for a lot of people. There's a reason why Cypher System is as popular as it is. So we're going to get some information about our 4 different archetypes, as well as our descriptors, our foci, because essentially what we've got for your characters is they're summed up in a sentence. So it is an adjective, noun, that verbs. So as an example, here we've got character descriptors. So I am a graceful adept who, and then you've got your focus, your foci, commands mental powers, masters defense, fuses flesh and steel. Pretty interesting. And of course, you've got all of these various different genre books and the core rule book that have way more descriptors and foci and ciphers, equipment, and so forth. Then we've got the Game Master's book. This is going to give us the Game Master's side of Cypher System. This also includes a couple of short adventures. They are really short adventures. Once again, keeping in mind that this is scene-based, this is narrative. You're looking at, even though each adventure is only a few pages in length, there is a bit going on to it. So it's not as if you're going to sit there and have every single area all plotted out, things like that. No, there's a lot more free-flowing narrative to Cypher System adventures. So we'll get into the use of ciphers, different kinds of ciphers, the GM intrusion, creatures. Funny enough, like here, our war droid. So it's a level 6. So you just take the level of the creature, monster, NPC, whatever, and that is your task difficulty. You'll multiply it by 3, and that is the number to hit that creature, monster, what have you. And we get some information about each. But as you can see, stat blocks, pretty concise for the Cypher system. Then we get into our adventures. We've got the Creeping Ooze. This is the fantasy adventure. And then we also have our science fiction adventure, Zambit Station, a science fiction adventure. Here we've got it right here. And that will wrap up the Game Master's book. So that's a peek at what we find inside the Cypher System Starter Set from Monte Cook Games. Let's swing on over to the other cameras so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. I've got to say, the player book in the starter set is excellent, and I have seen a lot of starter sets in my day, and this player book really stacks up with the best of them. Just a few pages gets you all the major aspects of Cypher System. Now, of course, obviously enough, the core rulebook is going to have tons more content in it, way more information, even for the players. But still, in just a few pages, I think the player book does a really nice job of getting players up to speed to jump on in and enjoy Cypher System. The Game Master book, the 2 adventures which are included, sort of ho-hum. I mean, they're okay. They're not blowing the doors off. They didn't blow my socks off. But I do understand introductory adventures tend to be a little more ho-hum because they are really focused on showing game masters how adventures are presented, giving them some ideas on how to handle certain situations that may come up in the adventure, so on and so forth. I just found them to be all right. They just really, in my opinion, don't sell Cypher System like they could have. I also still have questions about game mastering Cypher System. I still think it's kind of tricky, especially those ciphers. Not maybe necessarily the GM intrusions, but the ciphers themselves. And I think that's part of the reason why some people kind of scratch their heads about Cypher System, is because they think the ciphers are the main focus of the game, which they really aren't. They're just one-shot items, essentially, that give a bonus to the player characters. But still, I think ciphers probably work better in certain genres than in others. So like a fantasy genre, ciphers are probably super easy. In a more modern genre, say a police procedural sort of setting, probably a lot trickier. Like I said, I honestly think if I played a couple of games with an experienced GM, I would probably have a much better feel for game mastering Cypher System. And I got to be completely honest, I have not finished reading through the core rulebook yet, so I'm sure that probably leads to a little bit of my confusion too. But all in all, very solid starter set. The rest of the content, nicely done, good production quality. Honestly, I don't know why it's such a cheap box. It's not that big a deal in the great scheme of things. But as far as starter sets go, that's probably the weakest box out of the bunch that I have seen. Thankfully, the contents of the box far better. So on a score of 0 to 10, I give the Cypher System Starter Set a 7.5 out of 10. I certainly do recommend it. If you're curious about Cypher System or the upcoming Cypher, you should definitely give this a shot because it's a very small buy-in to check this out. As I've pointed out previously, I don't believe that there are huge, massive wholesale changes with Cypher compared to the current Cypher system. And of course, if you haven't backed the Kickstarter yet, I'm sure it'll be over by the time you were to order this and check this out. but it'll give you a leg up when Cypher comes to retail, whether if Cypher is going to be up your alley or not. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.